Sometimes a single event happens that doesn't just shock a city, it ripples through its entire culture. It can even inspire art that forces us all to look at some really uncomfortable truths. So today, we're going to explore how a brutal, real-life racial attack in New York City became the direct inspiration for one of the most powerful American films ever made.
And it all starts with something so incredibly ordinary. Just a moment of bad luck on a cold December night that would spiral into a national tragedy.
So that car trouble? It leaves three young black men, Michael Griffith, Cedric Sandiford, and Timothy Grimes, stranded in Howard Beach. Now, this was a neighborhood known at the time for being very insular and very white. They were just looking for help, and they walked into a local pizzeria completely unaware they were stepping right into the crosshairs of this simmering racial hatred.
What's just so terrifying is how fast it all happened. I mean, look at this timeline. In less than an hour, a simple request to use a phone escalates into a full-blown mob attack. The three men walk out of the pizzeria, and they're met by a dozen white youths armed with baseball bats and tree limbs. In the absolute chaos that follows, Michael Griffiths is chased onto a busy highway and killed.
And there is absolutely zero ambiguity about the motive here. This alleged quote, which was reportedly said by one of the teens as he rounded up more people from a party, well, it makes the racial hatred behind the attack chillingly clear. This wasn't just a fight. This was targeted, deadly violence.
So when the news of Michael Griffith's death broke, it was like throwing a match into a powder keg. The incident immediately became this raw symbol of the deep racial tensions that were bubbling just beneath the surface of New York City. And the reaction was immediate, and it was completely polarized. You had civil rights activists organizing these marches right through Howard Beach, where they were met with racist taunts and signs from white residents. Even the mayor at the time, Ed Koch, called it what it was, a modern-day lynching. The city was basically drawing battle lines.
As the outrage kept growing, so did this profound distrust that the system could even deliver justice. And the focus shifted really quickly to the Queens district attorney, and whether he could, or would, prosecute the case fairly.
Yeah, a lot of people were convinced that the local authorities were totally bungling the investigation. So to try and restore some public faith, the governor took this really unusual step of appointing a special prosecutor. Basically, an independent outsider to take over the whole case. This was a direct result of the community demanding accountability, loud and clear.
And you know what? That move led to some very real consequences. Now, the attackers were acquitted of murder, but three of the main instigators were convicted of manslaughter. And as you can see here, they got some pretty significant prison sentences. The accused ringleader, John Lester, got up to 30 years.
The judge's words during the sentencing just captured the absolute inhumanity of the crime. He wasn't just sentencing a criminal act, he was condemning this shocking lack of empathy. He pointed out that the mob kept beating Cedric Sandiford, even after they had watched Michael Griffith die.
So while all of this is playing out in the legal system, a young filmmaker named Spike Lee is watching. And he saw more than just a crime. He saw a story that absolutely had to be told, a story that could capture the racial fault lines of America.
And Lee himself has been very clear about this. The Howard Beach incident was a direct inspiration for his film. He took the raw, painful reality of that night and used it as the foundation for a fictional story set on the hottest day of the summer in Brooklyn.
When you put them side by side like this, the parallels are just impossible to ignore. In both reality and in the film, you've got a confrontation at a pizzeria that involves an unarmed black man. In both stories, it escalates until it ends in his death at the hands of white aggressors, a mob in one case, the police in the other. Art wasn't just imitating life here, it was holding up a big, unflinching mirror to it.
And the film's central victim, Radio Raheem, becomes this incredibly powerful symbol. He's defined by two things: his boombox blasting Fight the Power and his iconic rings. They represent this epic, eternal struggle between love and hate that's really at the heart of the story, and maybe the country itself.
And Spike Lee leaves absolutely no doubt about his intentions. The film's credits explicitly dedicate the work to the families of 6 real victims of racial or police violence. And right there, at the very top of the list, Michael Griffith, the young man whose death at Howard Beach started it all.
So the film came out back in 1989, but its power hasn't faded one bit. In fact, you could argue that its central questions have only become more urgent over time.
And this is it. This is the question that people have been debating for decades. In his grief and rage over Radio Raheem's death, the main character, Mookie, picks up a trash can and hurls it through the pizzeria window, kicking off a riot that destroys the place. The film never tells you if this was the right thing to do. It forces us to ask ourselves, And to make sure we really wrestle with that question, the film ends by putting these two competing philosophies head-to-head. On one side, you have Martin Luther King Jr.'s unwavering commitment to nonviolence, and on the other, you have Malcolm X's argument for self-defense. The film presents both, but it doesn't choose a side. It leaves that conflict for us, the audience, to resolve.
But what about the director himself? Well, Spike Lee's take on this is pretty pointed. He has said that, in his experience, it's mostly white audiences who get hung up on the destruction of the pizzeria. And he argues that by focusing on that broken window, they're kind of missing the bigger injustice, the murder of Radio Raheem.
And that leaves us with this final, massive question, a question that connects the tragedy of Howard Beach to the art of do the right thing and still resonates so deeply today. It forces us to really look at our own values and ask, when a life is taken and property is destroyed in response, which injustice should we mourn more? The film, born from a real-world tragedy, doesn't give us an easy answer, because there just isn't